If you don't think that women and girls have a right to something so basic, so critical to life and survival as safety, then you are not giving them an opportunity to get equality, justice opportunities, the daily provisions that they need. Without safety, you can't even get those other things. So let's look at how girls are hindered by what we think about their right to safety. If you know the case, please read up on it. Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted of the deaths of two men, and his claim for self defense led to the jury deciding that he was not guilty, 17 years old. Now, we're moving on to Crystal Kaiser, who also was 17. And at the age of 17, according to the Washington Post, court records demonstrate that police have evidence that Villar was abusing multiple underage African American girls and that there was video evidence. Now, at last I checked, Crystal Kaiser, now she too is a resident of Kenosha, Wisconsin, and she allegedly met Randy Villar III, who's 34, on Backpage. She was 16 at the time. And she said she needed the money for food and school notebooks. And, after, I guess, a series of happenings that, maybe she'll be able to speak to more, a little bit more later. But anyway, when she gets on Backpage site, he is the first person that she encounters. And remember, Backpage no longer exists for practices very similar to this because, Crystal was 16. And so Crystal ends up somehow living with this man. And she alleges that over the course of time, he was sexually abusing her regularly and sometimes filmed the abuse. And this happened over the course of a year. And then Crystal says that he began to traffic her using Backpage and took the money that she was paid. Now, she was arrested for the murder, I believe. Let's see, she shot him twice while he was sitting in a chair. She set his house on fire and then she stole his car. Now, Crystal was let out on bond, but as you can imagine, she was not treated as someone who was, let's use the word worthy of using the claim of self-defense. However, community activists posted her $400,000 bond, and we don't know the outcome. There, it hasn't been another trial date said. We're waiting for that. The latest we know, the bond amount was lowered. But, we have to see what happens with that. So there again is another instance where I'm not even talking about some of the other stuff or controversies around the case, but just looking at it from male and female. When men are, walking around and they have this, this assault weapon, and someone makes them fear for their lives. Fear for their lives, they say. Somehow society jumps to their defense, leaps to their defense. Do we really feel that girls have a right, are worthy of defending themselves against males? Now, some of you might recall not too many years ago, in fact, around 2017, 2018, there was the nationally known case of Centoya Brown. Now, she was still a teenager at the time that she was sold into sex slavery, human trafficking. And she was sentenced to life imprisonment for murdering the person who I guess was considered to be her pimp, the person who sold her into sexual slavery for drug money. This is on American soil for drug money. Yeah, this was in Tennessee. And she served about 15 years, 16 years. But during that time, there were a lot of vocal activists that put in a lot of hard work to bring awareness to her case and make her case a household name. She has a book out now called Free Centoya, My Search for Redemption in the American Prison System. And I've not read that book, but I'm looking forward to reading that. And she actually goes by Centoya Brown Long because she's since married since her release from prison. And Centoya, I remember people saying, well, she didn't have to kill him. She didn't have to do this. And even as, people were, pushing back, not, just on social media. This was being heard in workshops and conferences. People were on the ground, trying to generate awareness about her case and why it was important, and she herself was doing a great deal of work. She's free, and she's going to be setting up a nonprofit. As far as I last looked it up. But my goodness, she's also someone who I remember it took so much push to get average everyday people with daughters and sisters and aunties and others to understand that that if you may have some fears for your life there, and unfortunately it can lead to murder. A lot of the pushback against Centoya being free was that there were other options. She could have done other things. And I just hope that we get to the place where we say there were other options. You could have done other things to the person who's doing the human trafficking, to the person who's doing the, the initiator of the violence. I want us to get to the place where we say that to those people and not to the victims who are trying to protect themselves, especially when they're girls and very young women. And so then we come to Ms. Piper Lewis. She recently turned 18 years old just this year. And she did plead guilty to voluntary manslaughter and willful injury. She had killed Zachary Brooks. He was a 37-year-old father who she said had sexually assaulted her multiple times in the weeks leading up to his killing. And so at 15 years old, she's being assaulted sexually multiple times at the age of 15. Now, she stabbed Brooks to death using a knife she found on a bedside table. Unfortunately, Piper Lewis, who is currently without a home, unhoused, was ordered to pay $150,000 to the estate of the person who violated her so horribly. Women and girls are supposed to quietly, silently, nicely, kindly, softly give up something of herself, of her life, of her time, of her talents to benefit men. So for instance, if a male is afraid of other males and he's afraid of being in a secluded space with those males, we say as a society, and other girls and women will affirm society in this, and saying, well, then women and girls are obligated to give up her privacy to accommodate and make him feel safer. And if that woman says, or that girl says, well, wait a minute, that makes me feel less safe, or that triggers me, or that frightens me, that terrifies me, that puts me in danger, we say that woman is a bigot. We say that woman is hateful. We say, and teach your children not to be hateful. So teach your children not to be hateful, instead of really being about hate, becomes teach your children not to say no. Teach your children not to say, I am afraid. Not to say, no, 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 I don't think we should do that because, I'm going to be nude. I'm going to be vulnerable. And this makes me afraid that somehow that's hateful. So what we're saying to girls is you can't protect yourself. You can't preemptively protect yourself by saying, hey, wait, this puts me in danger potentially. This makes me afraid for my safety potentially. This makes me afraid of some sort of assault, violence, or rape potentially. And then, if said girl, something happens and she assaults someone, then she's going to get blamed for that too. What are we saying to our girls? Women and girls are against the pervasive notion that if she doesn't make her body available to a male because he says he's lonely, he's hurting, he needs, he wants, and he wants it this way. I've spoken before on what girls tell me directly, that they're up against being called hateful, racist, bigoted, sexual segregationist, uptight, prude. We remember that. But like they're coming up with new names, putting together new words, and telling the girls, hey, this is what you are when you refuse to sleep with this person because XYZ. And as I try to remind girls, you don't have to sleep with anybody for any reason. Sleeping with someone is not a life requirement. That's not like breathing and drinking water and taking care of yourself and sleeping and, taking your medications or your treatments or anything like that. It's not like that. It's when you and your values and your beliefs decide upon the right times. That's for you and the person that you choose to share it with. And if you choose not to share it with certain people, that doesn't make you anything. You just didn't want to. It's challenging to tell, these young ladies this in this climate that they're being raised in, and yet it's important to keep reminding them of this. Women and girls are valuable, and worthy, and our safety is worth protecting. Protecting us from rape is worth everything. Protecting us from assault is worth everything. Protecting us from violence is worth everything. Because we're worth everything. We're valuable. We're worthy. And with that full knowledge, understanding, and certainty that women and girls are valuable, women and girls are worthy, we can now go out here, make the world a better place, and just go out and be our naturally great selves. All right. Y'all have a good one. Thanks for listening. If you don't think that women and girls